All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Chaos Zero Nightmare video. This is Mr. Squirrel, as always. Glad to have you here. So, Vulcan released a video highlighting Pride Wins tier list, and kind of giving a really good synopsis, I think, of every character. He has a lot of experience in this game, referencing other content creators, kind of going through the characters. And I was like, oh, I'd like to review the tier list. And I was like, you know what? He already kind of did that, and I didn't want to sit there and go through and do the exact same thing. I don't feel like that's useful in the space of like just doing this, like multiple creators doing the exact same thing. Instead, I actually was thinking more about talking about what does this meta tier list look like. And I think this is, this for dimensional Twilight, which is more speed based. Like you want to finish within a specific amount of rounds to make sure you're getting, 3 stars on everything. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so what does that mean? What how can this tier list be kind of useful for players in the sense of thinking like what to plan out for and what to think about coming up, especially as we start thinking about like future characters? Because there's actually a really interesting pattern that if we look at the data here, or the way the synopsis of these characters, and there's a lot of interesting patterns. Now, I do want to highlight something that in this game, tier lists they're good, they're helpful, but at the same time, you have to remember that this game is very much also like there's a lot of neutral and common cards that can actually supplement decks that make these decks actually like that can fill weaknesses of characters, like adding draw to Mika, or potentially giving some shields or healing, or there's a lot of ways to supplement characters. However, there is something that it's very difficult to supplement. And I think some characters are a lot better at this. And I really want to highlight why some characters are in tier 0 when we look at the pattern across these characters, why some characters are getting placed in tier 0, and why I think the meta is sitting like it is, and how moving forward we kind of have to think about what to plan for, because there is trends here. And so let's look at all of the T0 characters. So the T0 characters right now in Dimensional Twilight are Hugo, Tressa, Veronica, Mika, and then Khalip. Now, there's something that really stands out about. If we look at their synopses or summaries, what do we see from a trend standpoint that is in all of these characters besides one? So 4 of the 5 all have the same exact pattern, and that is AP friendly. Now, I think this will always hold true for some extent, is that AP friendliness will always hold as being more tier 0-esque, because you can do more with less, right? As opposed to if we think about Haru and Karen, and both need a lot to build up. Now, I think moving forward, I think for maybe the first year of this game, we're going to see, they'll probably introduce new mechanics, new ways of playing. This game is there is so much flexibility in this game that I don't see, like, we'll see totally new mechanics that we can't even fathom right now and think of. And that, there'll probably be some kind of break stuff later. And I want to talk about this a little bit. So I think the first thing we're going to start seeing in power creep is going to be AP, in like support AP, or even damagers AP, because we know Rin, for instance, has some way to manipulate a little bit of AP with some of her abilities, when you start getting the epiphanies on them, right? So, and not a lot, but she does have the ability to give more action points on, I think it was like her draw one, I think it is her search card, and that's something that's really important when we start thinking about what I think is happening in this meta. Now, if we look at, right, we've got Haru, we've got Karen, we've got Rin. All of these DPS characters can use Mika. All of them. Every single one. Every single one of them, Mika can be on their team. I want to highlight Mika. Mika is one, well done devs for giving pretty much the best character in the game for free, and only gets stronger with dupes. But the thing here is that she is, I think, because she's so needed on so many teams, it creates a situation where in Dimensional Twilight you need 2 teams right now, at least. Maybe it'll be more in the future. Who knows? Or they might make you have more teams. Who knows? I don't know. That's neither here nor there. But the point is, when I'm playing right now, I'm sitting there thinking, I want to run this other team. Like I really wanted to run a Luke and Lucas team. Here's the problem. I'm already running a Hugo Tressa team, and Mika really pairs in really well. Now, is she needed for that team? No, but are there other supports that can work with that team? Yeah, but Tressa and Hugo really like the AP. It helps them do more things, right? And so then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, all right, well, I've got Luke and Lucas, but that team, guess what? Also wants to run Mika. Oh, okay. Well, what about Karen and Haru? Mika. What about Maylin? Mika. And it's just like, whoa. I have Maylin. Problem is, her team wants to run Mika. Now, does that mean, she's like Mika's the best support? I mean, she's very good for that team because, you want to do those basics and a lot of the basics. And we're seeing this pattern arise where we have one Mika and multiple teams. And I think for a lot of players, it really is important to consider. You should probably have summons saved for when we get our next AP support character. Because it's very noticeable when a character is not able to put more action points. Now, granted, again, there are some neutral calls that can help alleviate some of these issues. But I'm going to keep saying characters that can advance AP and draw. Draw is also very important because now it's kind of interesting when we look at this. What's in the top? AP friendliness. What's in tier 1 right now? Draw search, right? Break and draw search. Now imagine we start thinking about this and we say, hey, what could a new character start potentially including? What if they start doing more break and, AP, right? Because I think of Maylin. I think Maylin will probably be one of the better aging units in this game. I think Hugo will be really good at aging. But at the same time, this is going to be a complex game to think about aging because there's so much flexibility in the ways characters build. And so this is a very tricky topic because we don't know. This is a very unique type of gacha game. But I think the one thing we need to think about right now in the meta, what do we need right now? And that's AP. And we only got one character that's very consistent at doing that, right? And she not only gives AP, she heals. This makes her very valuable. Very valuable. Now, granted, there are other characters like Cassius can heal when he does drawing. You have Orlea, who does a lot of healing and shielding and does a lot of damage at the same time. But these characters are, again, lacking this AP, right? And that AP is so fundamental to getting your DPS to do more and more and more damage. Now, my general thought consensus is that we already have a healer AP. What if we start thinking about a shielder AP? Right? I think shields are in a weird space right now. I think they're very good. I think it's an incredibly good synergy. But we look right here, and these characters kind of work together, and it's very much counterattack based. But they're also really, 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 like, they need some healing. Healing and AP. Guess who can sit on that team? Mika! And, like, we keep running into these issues where it's like Mika. Like, if Mika... You feel your team with and without Mika. I'm just going to be honest with you. When my team doesn't have Mika, I kind of feel it because I'm like, oh, I don't have as much AP to work with. And it's like, I really wish I had Mika right now. And so my brain is thinking, if we're thinking about planning for it, I think for the first chunk of this game right now, and by chunk, I mean, first 6 to 12 months, I think AP generation is going to be the kicker. I have a feeling as the years progress, they will introduce new and broken mechanics that do crazy things that we can't even conceptualize right now. But right now, what I think players need to worry about is that we have a lot of DPS and we have a lot of tanks and we have a lot of characters. Like, look, the best tank in the game, the hybrid DPS, Calipe, she's AP hungry. Well, guess who one of her best friends is? Mika! You get it? So this begs a bigger question. How do we, if I am a player right now, which I am, I love this game. My brain is saying, AP is incredibly important. So if I'm playing from that mindset, then my brain is also saying, I'm going to hyper focus on characters and save for characters that can increase AP generation. Because those are going to be the supports, the damage dealers, the shielders. Those are going to be the characters that can potentially push my account further, at least for the time being. We don't know what the new mechanics will bring into the game. They're going to introduce new and crazy things, especially as they add probably cards to the chaos, as they add cards to the roguelite mode. there's going to be so much new stuff they're adding in. Now, personally, I have a bias. I love shielding based characters. I have not pulled a lot of shielding based characters, unfortunately, but I would love to run a Kalipe team, right? But here's the problem with my, I don't have Kalipe. But then also, I need more AP generators. So you see where I'm coming at right now is that this pattern is very, very interesting when we look at who's tier 0, AP friendly. Tier 1, draw search. And then tier 2 is these characters are more long term. Now, granted, that does make sense because we're talking about Dimensional Twilight, and it may change even further when they start adding new. I guarantee they'll add more modes into this game. But at the same time, I do want to commemorate the game. There is a lot of ways to combat some of these issues with, neutral cards, but it's also when we consider what these characters' kits actually have available to them, it is important to understand Mika is, and I will just say this, is the most valuable character in the game currently a week into the game. I personally am going to be saving for characters that will increase AP generation because right now the majority of the characters need that as we get new DPS that maybe are potentially a little bit less AP hungry, like we see in our top row right here. That could potentially shift a lot of stuff. Now, granted, they might introduce new neutral cards, they might introduce more things that, maybe it doesn't become as necessary, but the moral of the story is AP and draw are incredibly important. And imagine we start adding characters that do have AP and draw. See, now we start getting into some serious, like AP plus draw. That will be a broken combo. Imagine they add a support that does AP draw. Ooh, that could be frightening. Because then you're able to increase AP, get new cards, keep cycling through these systems. And my point of what I'm trying to say here is that the combination of these effects that we see in tier 0 and tier 1 right now that will really dictate these characters. And I think, when new supports come out that are doing these crazy things, like Karen could be moved way up. So could Haru. Imagine it's much more consistent. Imagine you have a draw search card, like a support that does draw search. I don't know if they'll do that. That's just that you're combining so many amazing mechanics. They'll probably do it later down the line. I don't know if we'll see that soon. But then Haru becomes insane because then you can start searching out, the anchor shot more and more and get those anchor shots. And with increased AP, you just, you're shooting them off like crazy. And then Haru just becomes one of the best DPS in the game because of, then now she's becoming very consistent and you're having a lot of AP generation. And then that really makes her just a better character. So what I'm trying to use Haru as an example here is that she, by one character, can potentially shift where she sits in the meta enormously, because when you're looking at the mechanics that are dictating what makes a character incredibly strong, and again, this tier list is subjective. I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but it's important to note not that what is a tier here, like, oh, it's this character or this character. I'm not saying that. What I am specifically saying is what are the mechanics that are making these characters sit in these tiers. That's the more important point than the character themselves. There are mechanics at play right now that are creating characters that are higher in the meta than other characters. Those mechanics, it's like any game, those mechanics make play a little bit easier and easier to progress. That's what this tier list is trying. I'm using this tier list to show is that there is a pattern in the data. That pattern is showing you AP is what right now is meta. Draw is second meta. It's as simple as that. And as we progress the meta and we potentially change these things and add characters that can do these things in conjunction with each other, we begin to change what is more and less meta. Right now, again, I'm saying what is more or less meta, not specific characters. I'm saying mechanics that are meta. Here, I am specifically calling out AP right now is what is meta. And as we continue to get more characters, I'm telling players, I think you should really look out for characters that can increase AP, because so many teams right now are reliant on Mika for good reason. But as a player that I want to encourage people to not spend a lot of money or any money is that you really want to hone your resources. As long as you got some good DPS, I would really start saving my resources for characters that can do AP increases. That's pretty much what I'm seeing in this meta. AP increases and unique forms of draw with healing and shielding, especially so that way for longer battles, especially shielding are way more important. Shielding is more important in, I think, Chaos, while very fast damage is important to Twilight. Dimensional Twilight. That's my general thought consensus. I hope it helps everyone. and just thinking about what are some interesting patterns that are emerging in the meta from when we look at this tier list. That's my general consensus. I hope it helps. And as always, remember, failing is just your first attempt at learning.